Hi, I just thought I would come on here and do a recap as quick as I can. I don't know that it'll be quick, of my testimony and what God has done from Birmingham, Alabama in March until now. It actually started in September of 2024. I was in a bad relationship. We were both addicted to drugs. We were living in a house that it wasn't technically abandoned. It had all the characteristics of an abandoned house. Someone that we knew was an investor, and in hopes to try to keep copper from getting stripped from it because it was a really bad neighborhood, he was allowing us to stay in there because at least he knew who was in the house. So there was one bathroom that had water in it. We had to keep it running constantly because if not, it would flood the street, and then Birmingham would know that there was free water going to it. There was no power. We had managed to get a generator, and so just in the middle of it, the devil was so deep in me that I just really didn't believe that God was real anymore. I didn't understand how we could possibly live in a world like that. And I was delusional. It was the drugs, and it was the devil, and it was all the things that go into the deep despair of that just causes confusion. And so in September, I was hungry, and I had reached out to somebody that I dated in high school, and he had gone through some things his own self and found God and went through Teen Challenge. And anyways, I reached out to him and I said, "Are you still living in this city?" Because that's where he lived when we dated 20 years, whatever, years ago. And I said, "I'm hungry." And I said, "I don't have any money and I'm hungry. Are you still out here?" And he called me, and when I answered, and he said, "Girl, I didn't even believe you. What is going on with you?" He said, "I thought someone had hacked your profile." So he sends me a little bit of money. He says, "I'm not going to send you enough to be able to buy drugs, but I'll send you enough to be able to get a meal. And when you need more food, send me that receipt and I'll send you money." Which is really what I needed. I was still using. Sometimes I would take $5 somebody gave me and I would gamble it, and it was just a downward spiral. But somewhere around in September, I got this message from him, and it was semi-prophetic, reaching out to me, and it said a lot of things. But what stood out to me was God said, "You have to be the one. You have to take the first step, and He will make a way. Watch all the doors open." And so it just like this emphasis 2 or 3 times on it has to be you. You have to take the first step. And I'm like, what does that even mean? So September went by, October went by, Christmas I was by myself. I had left that house and that relationship, and I was living in a camper. That was not a better situation. It was, but it wasn't. There was power, but there were more drugs present. And so I was, on Christmas Day, I was by myself. I was looking out the window, and all these cardinals came around, and I got to thinking about it. So I decided that since leaving that house and that relationship clearly wasn't my first step because no doors were opening, I would quit drugs. So I quit drugs for like 2 days or whatever, and it was clearly, this isn't it. So I just went back to using drugs, and then some different things happened. The guy that I had broken up with, he got he got fed up with the lifestyle too, and had contacted someone in Florida that used to live in Birmingham, and he got a job there. And I just, all of a sudden, I felt a different kind of alone and a different kind of fight in me, and I didn't really understand it, but I knew I didn't want to be around those people. I wasn't even really looking to leave Birmingham. I just didn't want to be in the environment that I was in. And he came and he got me, and I left, and we took drugs back. And when he got high, he got paid on a Wednesday. I think he came on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And on Friday, he couldn't go to work because he was too high. And his friend had come and gotten him because he had been clean he said, if you want to change your life, I'll help you, but don't come down here and waste my time. And so when he called into work, everybody was fine about it. But on Monday, when he went back, they asked him, could he pass a drug test? And then he was honest about it. And so that got him laid off. He was able to, the guy called him, basically was like, what are you doing? I thought you were serious, thought you were done, you know. And so he said, you can go to sober living. I'm not paying for the hotel anymore. I'll get you in sober living. After 2 weeks, you can start working. You can pay the rent there. And if you want to change your life, I'll help you. If not, go find somewhere else to work. So, you know, I don't even know that it was a question for Mick, but I knew that I loved him. I loved him enough that I knew that's what he needed. And whether or not whatever I did, like me going back to Birmingham or whatever, like I couldn't even risk speaking up to hinder him in making a change in his life. And so we packed up my stuff and we rented a Dodge Caravan and we took me back to Birmingham. And I didn't know where I was going and I didn't want to tell everybody. I had lied and said, oh yeah, I got this job at this hotel. All of it was not true. I was still using, you know. I wasn't even really mad about taking me home because my dope had run out. And so when he went to take me home, we rented a hotel. We got a bag. We rented a hotel for the weekend. We fought the whole weekend. On Sunday when he went to check out, I was like, yeah, I'm not staying here. So all my money, I had won a little bit of money gambling the week before, and then he had his check. We had almost spent all the money. He had enough to cover gas to get back, and I was like, yeah, I'm not staying here. Like, I just like walked out on the balcony to check out of the room, and he was going to go drop me off at the trailer park, and I just looked around and it was raining, and I was like, I'll die here. Like, I miss my kids. I have no joy in my life, and like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to get in the car and go to Pittsburgh. It never dawned on me that it might worry him, because to me it was already set in stone. He was going to sober living, and so I was just I didn't know. Now in hindsight, I know that God just lovingly blinded me to get me alone and get me just out of it, to where I had no choice but to let him have my attention. And so since we had fought all weekend, he kind of circled the city, and I kept going, well, I'm leaving. Like, you're wasting time going 459. Like, I'm not going to this guy's house. If you try to meet somebody and pass me, I'm just riding back. Like, I'm just riding back. So we go, and as we're pulling into the Publix in Pensacola, he goes, well, he's like, I got to tell you, you got a lot of balls. I don't know what you're about to do, and I don't think I could have done it, but you're obviously sick of it. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, it'll be okay. So the next morning, he was leaving for sober living. We had enough left to get a hotel, a cheap hotel, and because I was on meth, everybody I saw, I thought they were trying to. Hey, Cooper. I thought they were trying to, you know, they're just looking sideways at me or whatever. So the guy after the guy sent me the message that I know from my past, I left this part out, I forgot. There were, over the next 4 months, up until I left in March, 3 different strangers came up to me, like at the store, restaurant called Jack's in Birmingham. They didn't know me, and they would just say, can we pray for you? Yeah, you know, let me let you feel better. Yeah, you can pray for me. But then they all had the same pattern. At some point, I remember the lady at Jack's, she was praying for me and had her hands on me, and I had my head bowed, and I was thinking, come on. And then she goes, oh, okay. And she goes, listen, I feel like I need to tell you, like, God will provide. You have to be the one to take the first step. It has to be you, but then watch all the doors open. And so I'm like, I start crying, because I'm like, why would you say that? You know? So anyway, so fast forward to March, so I'm not even thinking about all that anymore. So I get down to the hotel, and he goes to leave. Before he leaves, I get high before we check out. Before he sees me, he's coming out of the bathroom, he sees me by the door, he sees me get high. And then we start to check out, and he goes and he sits by this big oak tree that was out front, By the time I check out and I come back, he's bawling. And I'm thinking, oh, he's going to miss me because he loves me, you know. And I go over there and I'm so mad at you. I'm like, mad at me? What did I do? And he's like, I got to worry about you down here. I'm like, why would you worry? And he's like, you know, I'm leaving. And I was like, you better leave. And so he breaks up with me before he gets in the car to go to sober living. So I knew he was leaving, but I wasn't expecting to like not have him as a crutch to talk to and things, I guess. And so since we had blown all our money, like it wasn't like he had any money to help me. So I'm just like got all my stuff on the luggage cart. I'm on the side of this hotel, this cheap hotel in Pensacola. This lady comes out all day off and on. She's coming out smoking, looking at me, smoking and looking at me, smoking. And the sun starts to go down and she comes out and she goes, God won't leave me alone. I have to get you a room. So, you know, I got like pride and attitude and I'm like, no, I'm good, thanks, you know. I was like, I'm not out here asking for money, I'm fine. And then I'm thinking, as soon as she goes in and shuts the door, I'm like, oh, I don't know why I just did that. Like, I need a room. Well, she comes right back out and she goes, she's like, God's been talking to me about it all day. So I don't care if you use the room or you don't use the room. I have to be obedient. So I'm going to go get the room. And if you want the keys and you want to use it, you can. So I'm like, I start crying. I was already crying off and on because Mick had broken my heart, you know. And so I go in the lobby and I can't really talk to the lady. She's wanting my ID and my name because I would be in the room. And so I just give them my ID and I go out to the bench and I got my dog and I'm sobbing. Like my heart, I feel so, God wasn't even, for me, from my perspective, I wasn't talking to God about it, you know. I just was like in so much emotional pain and I felt so abandoned and I felt so everything all at once. And so I was crying and sobbing to the extent that my dog had run off the bench. He didn't even want to be by me. He was like, I'm not licking tears, you're being weird, you're doing too much. So the lady comes back out to hand me the keys and I say, I already know she's going to feel like she has to comfort me because that's just what we do as people. So I said, you know, it's not running all down my face. You don't have to. I know if you feel like you have to cover me, but you don't have to. It's just, it's raw and I love him and I don't know what I've done and all this. And so I said, I'm fine. And she said, if you need anything, such and such is my room number, you know. I was like, thank you. I'll be okay. I'll put on my big girl panties tomorrow. And so she gets almost to her room and then she leans back and she goes, hey baby, don't thank me. This wasn't me, this was God, and you've taken your first step. And I was like, what? You know, because I wouldn't have left. I don't even know, me leaving wasn't like Chelsea. Like I don't like, now I know. It's almost like God just pinched me and picked me up and was like, we're gonna do this thing. So that was the first night. The next day she introduced me to this lady. Her name was Cindy. She was working with this offensive in Pensacola, but she had also been going through a black mold deal at her apartment, so she had been displaced. It had killed her little dog, and so she was moving from one hotel to a cheaper hotel, but she came by to help me first. So I met her, and then so I had $27, so I decided to gamble it, right? And I won $616. And waiting on the people to cash me out. They had cashed me out all these times before. I've been playing with these same people for years. So, you know, like, they ended up never cashing me out. But the lady Cindy had paid for my second night. And then, so the next day when we checked out, I was on the curb until almost nighttime. And then she came back through and she's like, why are you still here? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? So she paid for another night. And then she moved me to the hotel she was at, which ironically they put me in a room number 111. And so she paid for that. She said, that's it though. So that was 4 nights there. on my 5th night, she agreed to keep Cooper, and I went to Waterfront Mission in Pensacola. Hush! I went to Waterfront Mission in Pensacola, and I was 5 days clean,